Imagine you're driving down the highway in your brand new electric vehicle. Music streaming, GPS guiding, sensors humming. Now stop and think. That car knows more about you than most of your friends. It knows where you live, where you work, the school where your kids go to, how often you speed, whether you brake too late, even the times of day you're most likely to be tired and behind the wheel. And what if all that information isn't just staying in your car? What if it's being quietly uploaded every trip, every day, to a server across the ocean? A server controlled by a government that sees United States not as trading partners, but as a rival. That's not a paranoid thought experiment. That's the risk US regulators are staring at right now. And the office tasked with deciding what happens next isn't the Pentagon. It isn't the FBI. It isn't Congress. It's a little-known shop inside the Department of Commerce, the ICTS office. This is the story of how a small regulator with a long name is quietly deciding which technologies America can trust. Hey everybody, welcome to Midweek Sitrep, your bi-weekly briefing on what's happening in the world of national security. My name is Jerry Fowler, and I'm your host. Every other week, I give you the context you need to see what's really going on so you can stay mission-focused. Today's briefing is on the ICTS, the Information and Communications Technology and Services Office. We're going to cover where ICTS came from and why it was created, how it banned Kaspersky antivirus, and what that taught us, why connected cars are its next frontier, other technologies ICTS is watching from apps to undersea cables, the compliance lessons for businesses, and the bigger picture, how ICTS fits into America's broader strategy of protecting critical technology. Enough, let's get to it. Let's go back in time to 2019. The first Trump administration was already moving aggressively against Huawei and ZTE, two Chinese telecom giants accused of enabling espionage. That same year, President Trump signed Executive Order 13873, creating the ICTS Authority. The idea was straightforward. Give the Department of Commerce the ability to review and block transactions involving foreign information and communications technology if they pose an unacceptable risk to U.S. national security. You may wonder, why commerce? Because this wasn't just a defense issue. It was about the marketplace. Americans were buying phones, apps, and software from companies that might be beholden to foreign governments. And once that technology was inside our networks, it was almost impossible to get rid of. If CFIUS is the bouncer stopping bad deals at the door, ICTS is the inspector checking what's already on our shelves. And the scope is sweeping. ICTS can look at software, hardware, cloud services, really anything that connects to US networks. It doesn't matter if you're selling to the government or just to everyday people. If ICTS decides your tech is a risk, you're out. Now, creating a new authority on paper is one thing. Making it real, that's another. When President Trump signed Executive Order 13873 in May 2019, it gave Commerce the power to review tech transactions tied to foreign adversaries. But for a while, that power mostly sat on the shelf. Why? Because standing up ICTS wasn't simple. The Commerce Department had to define what counted as covered transactions. It had to write rules, take public comments, and deal with pushback from industry. Businesses worried that the authority was so broad it could cover almost anything. So while the executive order created the foundation, the ICTS program didn't come to life overnight. The first real regulations didn't land until January 21, in the final days of the first Trump administration. Even then, it took months before Commerce staffed up and started using the tool. For a while, ICTS felt more like a warning shot than a functioning office. Companies knew the rules existed, but they weren't sure if or when they'd be enforced. That's why the Kaspersky decision in 2024 was such a watershed moment. It wasn't just another policy announcement. It was proof that ICTS was no longer dormant. It was operational, active, and willing to pull a product off the US market. Let's talk about that Kaspersky ban. Kaspersky Labs is a Russian cybersecurity company that built a global business by selling antivirus software. Millions of Americans used it to protect their computers. But for years, intelligence officials warned it was a problem. Because antivirus software isn't just another program. It has the keys to the kingdom. It scans everything on your computer. It updates constantly. It talks back to company servers. If a hostile government had influence over that company, it could become the perfect tool for surveillance or sabotage. In 2017, the Department of Homeland Security banned Kaspersky from federal networks. But the story didn't end there. In June 24, ICTS made the call. All new sales of Kaspersky software in the United States were prohibited. Retailers had to stop selling it. Distributors had to pull it. Consumers couldn't buy it legally. This wasn't just the government protecting itself. It was the government protecting the entire market. Now you may be wondering, so what? Well, for businesses, ICTS showed it has the authority and the appetite to take foreign tech out of circulation. And for consumers, you may not have noticed a Federal Register notice, but you definitely noticed when the software disappeared. So what's the next frontier? Well, that answer is easy. Connected cars. Kaspersky was the opening act. Now the spotlight is on cars. Today's vehicles are rolling supercomputers. They're constantly gathering data, location history, driving patterns, passenger information, even voice commands. And most of that data doesn't just sit in your car. It syncs with apps, uploads to servers, and connects to a global supply chain. That's why regulators are worried about Chinese electric vehicle makers like BYD or Geely. Imagine millions of US cars quietly sending real-time location data back to servers in a country with a very different view of privacy and an adversarial relationship with the US. For adversaries, connected vehicles could be a treasure trove, mapping US infrastructure, tracking high-value individuals, or in a crisis, even disrupting fleets remotely. Now, what's the so what? For policymakers, this is a whole new regulatory front line. The auto industry isn't just about emissions or safety anymore. It's about surveillance. And for everyday drivers, it's a reminder that your car is no longer just transportation. It's a data hub. And that data is power. So let's look beyond cars and look to apps, clouds, and cables. Because ICTS isn't just worried about cars. Its reach stretches across the entire digital economy, and that means almost everything we touch in our daily life. Take mobile apps. TikTok has dominated the headlines for the past couple of years, but ICTS's authority doesn't stop there. Any app that sucks up location data, biometric details, or personal information and sends it overseas could be reviewed. Think of fitness trackers, dating apps, or even mobile games that ask for far more permissions than they actually need. If a foreign government can lean on a company behind the app, it's a national security risk. Then there's the cloud. Businesses and governments increasingly rely on cloud services to store sensitive information. But if the servers are run by or linked to companies in adversary countries, who actually controls the data? Who can see it? And in a crisis, who could cut it off? ICTS has the power to step in before those questions become emergencies. And finally, there's undersea cables. These fiber optic lifelines carry 95% of global internet traffic. Everything from military communications to your Netflix stream. If adversaries can tap into them, they can spy. If they can disrupt them, they can sever connections between continents. ICTS can review who builds, owns, or services those cables before they're even laid on the ocean floor. Now, what's the common thread here? If it connects Americans to the digital world, whether through an app on your phone, a server farm in another country, or a cable laid across the Pacific, ICTS has the authority to ask, is this safe? For business and compliance professionals, ICTS may not be top of mind, but it should be. Think of it as the quiet cousin of CFIUS, not always in the headlines, but with the power to reshape your market access overnight. Here are 3 big lessons. First, expect ICTS reviews. If your product touches connectivity, like apps, cloud services, cars, or hardware, assume it's within ICTS's line of sight. Build this into your risk assessments as you would sanctions, export controls, or CFIUS. 2, map your exposure. Don't wait for the Department of Commerce to tell you you've got a problem. Audit your supply chains now. If you're sourcing software, chips, or services from companies with ties to China, Russia, or other adversarial states, you're carrying ICTS risk. And third, plan for sudden change. ICTS bans don't come with grace periods. When the Kaspersky decision landed, retailers had to pull products immediately. If that happened to your software vendor, could your company pivot overnight? Contingency planning isn't optional. It's survival. The bottom line here, ICTS isn't just background noise. It's part of a new regulatory landscape. Treat it like CFIUS or OFAC, a permanent fixture of doing business in a world where national security and connectivity are inseparable. Here's the real takeaway. The rise of ICTS shows how much the definition of national security has changed. It's no longer just about aircraft carriers, fighter jets, or cyber weapons. It's about the invisible systems that knit our lives together. Our data, our devices, our networks. ICTS is the referee on that field. It decides which technologies get trusted in the US market and which ones get shown the door. And here's the thing, ICTS doesn't work in secrecy, but it doesn't work in the spotlight either. It operates in that middle space, quiet, technical, often overlooked, which is exactly why people miss it, until a decision lands and suddenly your favorite software, app, or even car is gone. And it's important for me to note, the folks at Commerce have taken their time to build a regulatory program that incorporates lessons learned from CFIUS and other national security regimes. Now, the bigger picture is this. ICTS isn't just a regulator. It's part of a broader strategy to secure America's digital backbone, to make sure that the technologies we depend on every day aren't Trojan horses built somewhere else. The story of ICTS isn't finished. In fact, it's just beginning. Right now, its decisions are shaping which software you can install, which cars hit U.S. roads, and which networks carry your data. Tomorrow, it could be wearables, medical devices, or that next must-have app. So when the headlines break out about a new ban or a sudden policy shift, remember, it may not be Congress, the Pentagon, or even the White House calling the play. It just might be a little office inside the Department of Commerce with a mandate that touches every American. The ICTS office. Not flashy, not famous, but in a world where everything is connected, it's the regulator of what connects us. That's it for today's Midweek Sitrep. If this episode gets you thinking, don't let the conversation stop here. Head over to the Insider Brief on Substack and subscribe. It's where we dig deeper, answer your questions, and preview what's next. We're also on YouTube, where you'll find short clips, interviews, and bonus content. Make sure to subscribe there if you haven't already. And if you want to support the show, go to everythingisnationalsecurity.com and check out our merch. Every shirt and hat helps keep Midweek Sitrep independent and growing. Subscribe, share, and stay sharp. I'm Jerry Fowler, and remember, everything is national security. See you next time. Midweek Sitrep with Jerry Fowler is an independent production of OpScent Media Group, LLC. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based upon the content discussed. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host, Jerry Fowler, and any guest, and do not reflect the official policy, position, or endorsement of any current or former employer, client, government agency, military organization, educational institution, or any other entity for which the host, Jerry Fowler, may be affiliated. Mention of a company, product, or service does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. Any references are provided for informational purposes only. This podcast does not disclose any classified, proprietary, or confidential information. All discussions are based upon publicly available information and personal expertise. Everything's national security. OpScent Media Group, LLC.